Alrighty, guys. Andrew Bulbros here. I want to discuss kind of a crazy Monday Night Football game, Damar Hamlin, and give a little update on him. Talk obviously about Brandon Staley's notes from our big win this weekend, and locking in the fifth seed. So, guys, let's get into it. All right, guys. As always, like and subscribe. Definitely helps the channel out. And again, we definitely want to try to reach as many Charger fans and just general football fans as possible on this channel. But I want to go into specifically Brandon Staley's notes. I want to talk a little bit about Damar Hamlin. I had a really interesting conversation with my father this morning. And just we talked quite a bit about, what happened with Damar and, what the situation was specifically. So we are thinking about doing a larger video with some of the other podcasters that we've actually connected with this season and just discuss NFL safety in the sport. We've kind of have a thread going on about, just player safety in general, right? How it's going to affect the NFL moving forward. I think Charger fans are very sensitive to that conversation because of people like Junior Seau, right? And the way, he tragically ended his life. And, it's one of those situations where it's one thing to hear about it and see it on the news as a retired player. It's another thing to see it on a Monday Night Football game. The whole world's watching and somebody goes into cardiac arrest. So by the way, guys, I'm just going to give a few thoughts on this right now. First and foremost, there's a very big difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest. I did not know this. When I spoke to my dad about this morning, I thought they were the same thing, right? They're not. Heart attack is when basically one of your aortas or the blood flow to the heart gets blocked and there's no oxygen going to the heart, right? Now, a heart attack is definitely better than a cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest is when your heart stops. That's exactly what happened to Damar Hamlin. So the argument now is brain damage. Can he speak? Can he walk? I mean, it's very, very, very severe. He has by far the worst situation. And, it's sad to see. It's sad to know that this is happening to such a young man in the very beginnings of his career. And so, again, my heart goes out to he and his family, and hopefully, hopefully he'll be okay. Right. I mean, it's one of the things that I really try to pay attention to as much as I possibly could this morning when I woke up, but, it's something to think about. But again, guys, would you like us to do, please let us know in the comments, because we are probably going live on Friday around noon. But let us know if you wanted us to do a video about player safety and NFL's concussion protocols. We can talk a lot about this, right? There was an interesting comment, and I'll drop it after this, but there was an interesting comment from Bob Costas. He talked quite a bit about how, hey, is this an NFL only type of situation? And he really said, no, the answer is no, it's not. Right. And this was definitely a one-off type of situation. I mean, there's nothing pointing to what caused this for this young man. Performance enhancing drugs, who knows? Like we just don't know right at this point. And, and it's such a PR nightmare for the NFL specifically, right? Because they've already been dealing with concussion protocols and other issues. But Bob Costas was very specifically talking about, hey, look, this is not just a NFL only issue, right? This is just a young man that had went into cardiac arrest on the field, and it's sad, it's heartbreaking, and our prayers go out to him. But it's something that we want to discuss further potentially. But let us know if you guys think that's of value. Okay. Having said that, let's go into Brandon Staley's notes on the big victory, and go into specifically, what was said, and really discuss, what really happened this game, right? Austin Eckler got the running game going. I mean, there's just a lot of really great things happening. And again, guys, I love seeing this. Spanos family here in the locker room. They are involved with the team, right? Again, one of the things that I've always said about the Chargers franchise that's always frustrated me is ownership is not willing to spend money for us to win a championship. They are changing and flipping that script today, right? That is happening, right? These guys are out here at every game, every locker room. They are focused on winning a championship. And so I love to see that, right? And, this man right here is leading the way, and it's really great to see. So this is why I like to do these recaps of his notes, because the reality is this: Brandon Staley is our leader, right? He's the one that's going to be leading this team into the playoffs, hopefully into a Super Bowl, and hopefully into a Super Bowl victory, right? So, again, it all starts from the top, but everyone in that room is involved in making this team successful, right? Every single person in that room is involved in that discussion and in that conversation. So let's get into his notes and go from there. So, Joey Bosa came out of the game. Is he healthy? Yes. Now, I really think Brandon Staley's a little bit dire to that conversation. We all know Joey Bosa's fine. I think they just wanted to get the wiggles out, get a few snaps in him. We all talked about him having a snap count. He's fine. I think it is interesting that he didn't go too deep into it. The one thing that I've noticed about Brandon Staley and also Justin Herbert specifically is that they're they give a pretty simple answer, right? They're going to give you extremely long-winded discussion. But I find that really interesting because, a lot of other people like myself tend to be fairly long-winded. But Brandon Staley just gives them the information, moves on. So I think it's pretty interesting. Now, Derwin James, as far as concussion protocol, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't play again this next week. I mean, what's the point of him being out there at all, right? I mean, it's not risk having him get injured. I think he's fine. But I guess we'll know on Wednesday. My opinion probably won't play against the Broncos, but who knows? Of course, I did just read an article that stated that, look, they want the 5th seed, so they're going to play as hard as they can. They want to get that W and retain the 5th seed, because to them, again, that gives them the easiest path to victory, being a wild card. So, we'll see how that plays out. Donald Parham Jr., I said all season that DP is an awesome weapon for Justin Herbert and this offense specifically, because he's so tall and he makes excellent plays. And if you recall, last season, he was knocked out because of a concussion. It was an extremely horrible concussion, very similar to what happened to Tua Tagovailoa. I can never say his name correctly. Tua. And, Donald Parham's gone through a lot, right? He had a major hamstring injury that, as we all know, and I've discussed a number of times, is very difficult to come back from. But he's a tremendous story of perseverance. I would not, I 100% agree that he is he's gone through a lot, right? And I promise you, during the season, he was probably more frustrated. Like, can I even come back? But our offense is better with him in there. Brandon Staley breaks it down quite a bit. He blocked well, which, again, I would argue a lot of our tight ends have not done a great job this year, right? I mean, Trey McKitty has been a bit of a disappointment, right? I think his PFF ratings are like at 30 right now. He's extremely low, right? He's just not blocking great. He's not progressing in the tight end role like we want. So it's really interesting to see how that plays out. Scored a touchdown, and I think he's a big red area target, right? I mean, he's that guy that is very difficult to cover. You're not going to make it easy for him to be covered by anybody, right? Nobody could do that. So anyways, it's great to see, right? And everyone on the sideline is very happy for him. And, this goes to show you the team culture, right? And this is great. Hopefully he can play well with confidence and shooting it, because he's a big weapon for us. And he really is. I said this all season. Donald Parham is an excellent weapon. I mean, think about Gerald Everett and Donald Parham. Those are two guys you have to cover. You have to respect them in the passing game, because really, Trey McKitty, you don't really have to. I think when Trey's in, for the most part, he's going to be in for blocking plays, right? And so, anyways, pretty interesting, contrast of styles and benefits of those different tight ends. So another good person of perseverance is Trey Pipkins. We all know his knee injury has been, pretty bad, but, I like what Brandon Staley says. He has a lot of toughness, and if you're going to play offensive line in the NFL, you have to be tough, right? You are in the trenches, right? You got dirty players out there. You're getting chop blocked. You're getting all kinds of course, that is an illegal block at this point, but, you've seen people roll up on you, running back comes at you, hit from the side. I mean, you're battling a lot of different angles and a lot of different interesting, potential injury positions, right? So, and make no mistake about it, guys, every single player on the field, every single player has an injury. They are not 100%, right? I mean, I know Joey Bosa talked a lot about how he had this ab injury and he's starting to come back. And, um, the reality is these guys have lingering injuries that just always are there. Right. And so it's good to see them come back and are doing well. Right. And, again, with Joey Bosa and, someone like a Trey Pipkins, they're battling through these injuries. Right. And so it's good to see that. And basically Brandon Staley just says, look, it's one thing to be injured, it's another thing to produce, right? And there's some truth to that, right? Because at some point, injuries can hinder your ability to succeed. That's the whole point. I know I had a lingering injury this year when I played softball. I didn't play the field a whole lot because I didn't have the ability to run as fast as I wanted to. So I was a bit of a liability in the outfield and or third base where I played. So look, at some point you just realized, hey, I'm not great in the field. So, I should sit and rest. And so like injuries like that are very important, right? And that's what the coaching staff makes decisions on, right? That's what they have to do. So it's pretty interesting. So again, his injuries, but he's still able to produce and do well. It'll be very interesting. It's a good example of toughness. And that's a big part of what this team makeup is, right? We all know that this team has persevered through so many injuries and so many issues. But it's just made us better and stronger. And it's also building a nice camaraderie in the locker room. You can already tell in the locker room that everyone is really involved with each other and really trying to make the most and the best out of, the scenario, with all of the players. So again, are we seeing a theme here, guys? Toughness, right? Kyle Van Noy's display of toughness. KVN is interesting. There's also a conversation a little further down about KVN and a conversation with Brandon Staley before. So I want to talk a little bit about his toughness and then go into that a little bit later. But he's durable and he's played down and out type of style that you have to play in the league. He's physical. He likes contact. He does everything right. Now, one of the things that he's had struggled with was obviously rushing the passer. He's done a lot better these past few weeks. But again, this is a new role for him, right? He didn't have, he wanted to rush the edge, but you got Joey Bosa and Klomack. Well, you know what? They're about the best in the league anyway. So you're just going to be middle linebacker. But now that he had to step up and learn that, he's started to understand how to play. But again, he's done a really good job of even learning how to stop the run on the edge, setting the edge. Those are things that he's had to learn as he's grown here in this, in this defense, right? But again, he has tons of leadership, toughness, physical, mental. I think he's a very good communicator, and he's very good at getting people to rally around him, which is important. Very impactful player across the board. I think his leadership is really huge. Now, this is interesting. So we start talking about there's no more injuries, thank God. And then the run game. Okay, we're going to go back to Kyle Van Noy in a little bit. I don't want to skip too far ahead, but we are going to come back to Kyle Van Noy because there's some really interesting things that Brandon Staley said when he recruited him to come to the Chargers. So I want to talk a little bit about that. As far as the production of the run game, it's very important, right? Now, we talked about this on our post-game show with the Trumpet Man. When you can show and have the defense respect the run, that means they stack more people in the box. Then the play action pass is open, then you can throw the ball downfield. That's why we haven't had a lot of downfield production, because they can run too high safety or shell, whatever you want to call it, right? Every team calls it something different. It seems like every commentator calls it something different. I think that's why it gets so confusing to some people. But look, two high safeties, you're covering the top. They split the half of the field. I got the left half, you got the right half, yada, yada, right? So, but when you have a good running game, those safeties have to respect the run, right? But when the team isn't running, like the Chargers have not, they do not have to respect the run. So I suspect this next game, you might see some heavier boxes coming from the Broncos because we had a great running game, run performance, right? It's pretty good. So we'll talk a little bit about this a little bit more, but again, Brandon Staley ultimately says, look, we were very close at a number of different games to really have a good performance. But what he talks about is rhythm. And it's funny because Brandon Staley always keeps talking about rhythm. Like, what does that really mean? Well, it really means, having the guard pull out correctly and he hits the hole at the right time, hitting one lineman and then maybe making it to the second level. And the second guard pulls out, hits the other linebacker. So then there's a gap. Then it's moving into the secondary so Austin Eckler or JK can actually run the ball through. So that's what I mean by rhythm. Getting in, moving it correctly, holding your blocks, sealing the edges. doing what you need to do to get the ball to move correctly, because there's a specific way that these running plays have to work. Now, again, we're lucky we have a Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert can just throw the ball and life is good, right? He's accurate. Not very often do we really think that he's going to throw many picks. Now, he has thrown a few picks this season, but some of them were a little bit odd, tip balls, so on and so forth. But again, the running game, again, if you can show balance, that's important. But again, also, Brandon Staley has clearly said he wants the passing game to be stronger than the running game. So I think that there's also a conversation that, look, there might not be as much effort into improving the running game, but it's clear that they want to make it, be effective, or at least in the back of the defense's mind, right? Because if you can dictate what the defense can be on defense, it opens up what you can do on offense, right? That's the whole chess match that the offensive coordinator has to deal with. And you go, know my frustrations with Joe Lombardi. Again, I've beaten that like a dead horse. I don't really want to go into it anymore. But again, that is something to really think about, moving forward with this team, especially when we start talking about it in the playoffs. And he specifically talks about that. But and this was interesting. I talked specifically about Trey McKitty, right? He said, I thought our tight ends had probably the best blocking game that we've had. I think receivers probably did their best blocking as well. Again, I've talked about this a lot. I get a little frustrated with if I'm frustrated with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They don't really do a very good job of blocking. Again, that's not what they do. I see teams like the Titans. I see teams like the Ravens. Those wide receivers do a very good job of blocking, right? So they're supporting the run game. That has not been an emphasis in our team so far this year, at least in my opinion, right? Agree or disagree with me on that. But it's one of the things that I really want to see our wide receivers do a little bit better, blocking a little more downfield and going from there. Now, again, there might be arguments both ways that, hey, look, you might draw a penalty, you could get a holding call, yada, yada. Sure. But it's one of those things that, you got to sit back and ask yourself this question, right? What is the best thing for this team? And I think a lot of our, we can improve on our blocking game. We really can. So that's definitely something that needs to be improved for sure. Again, did a really good job of mixing up different runs and different things, run game checks, gave us the right play call. Anyways, 192 yards. 192 yards, guy. That's pretty awesome, right? And it's nice because Justin Herbert doesn't have to do it all on himself. And again, we pretty much gave up in the third quarter. We were done, right? And we scored a third quarter touchdown. Or was it maybe even 2 third quarter touchdowns, which is awesome. We broke tackles. We did a great job. So, anyways, I was very, very, very excited to see it. And again, 31 runs. And it's great because, again, Justin Herbert, we also got Chase Daniel out there for a little while. Chase Daniel out there for a little while. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the discovery process and finding the rhythm. Brandon Staley, this is an interesting thing that he talks about, right? There's a lack of continuity. And I do think part of this is we got 3 rookies on the line, right? I shouldn't say 3 rookies. We got Jamari, we got Trey Pipkins, which is his first year, right? Playing fully, and then obviously Zion Johnson, right? So again, these guys, it took some time to get them there, right? And Pipkins is having a great season. We already talked a little bit about him, but again, it's cohesion. It's getting these guys to do things the right way, moving right, moving left, pulling correctly, opening these holes for these other guys, right? So, anyways, it was good because good mixture of personnel groupings. They did a lot of different sets, which I noticed, which I thought was pretty cool. Lots of difference of, management of running plays I thought was pretty good. So they are mixing some things up nice. But again, one of my frustrations with Joe Lombardi, he tends to do a lot more direct runs, which is just up the gut, power. They call them power. It's just boom, or power runs, which is basically halfback dive right, halfback dive left, direct runs, or zone reads, right? But, there was some good perimeter runs, which I thought were pretty good as well, too. They did mix that up a little bit more. I actually think we're probably better on their perimeter in most cases. But again, to Brandon Staley's points, you have to balance and then makes the defense have to defend it in different ways, right? So they have to call different plays to make sure the perimeter is protected, up the middle is protected, you keep the linebackers in the middle, you toss it out to the right. Well, then there's some additional speed there. So anyways, you have to continue doing that down the stretch. So the defense's performance against the run yesterday, which I thought was really interesting. the toss crack, there was really only basically what Brandon Staley says were really only 2 plays that were bad, right? The toss crack, and there was another one. Drew. There's a lot of holding calls. There's guys, just so you know, every single play you could call a hold. You could call all kinds of different penalties, right? I mean, these guys are out there, being physical and contacting each other. There's all kinds of different things like that happening. But again, contact runs were pretty good, right? Those two runs, and then that pass play to Van Jefferson off the loose play was interesting. And so Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack getting held on both of those, right? I mean, look, they played well, right? Now, again, the argument could be made. Cam Akers still had a great game. He still had a great game. I mean, explosive plays. I think we still lead the league in explosive plays against us, right? So that continues to need to be minimized. But again, one thing Brandon says always said, right? Always has said this. And guys, remember this. Just understand this, guys. Brandon Staley, if he had to choose between stopping the run or stopping the pass, he would stop the pass all day. He does not care about the run near as much. That's why we run such light boxes. We're not there to really, stack the box. I mean, unless we absolutely know it's a run play or a goal line stance, yada, yada. That's not our forte. But again, you got to remember, these are big things that, look, we care about stopping the pass. We're number 1 in the league right now in pass breakups and going from there. So anyways, this is kind of interesting. So we talked a little bit more about this, about the deep completion to Jefferson in the second quarter. Regardless of what happened to Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, there was some of that had that tight end man-to-man. We should have had another guy on the secondary to cover him. So again, with the too high shell, right, you split the field, right? So you have, Nas and Lowe up in the top. You split the field, right? Do not let anything get behind you, right? But again, you have to look down to see if they're running the ball. Then great, you crash down. But if they're not, you stay back, wait to see if the ball comes your direction, and then you adjust. And so clearly, one of their safeties were not looking at Jefferson and didn't do the safety contain at the top, right? You must have saw something else, maybe read something a little different. Maybe they thought it was a run. Who knows? But it was a good throw and catch. And Baker Mayfield's got talent, guys. I mean, let's not get it twisted. Baker Mayfield is a very good quarterback. In fact, I think he might even be the quarterback for the Rams next season, because there is word that Matt Stafford may actually retire, right? So there's some discussions around that. Who knows? I mean, anyways, interesting thing. But we have to learn from these mistakes and move on, right? It's interesting. So again, let's talk about Mike Davis. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to come back to Kyle Van Noy. So Mike Davis, again, I've known Mike Davis. I've watched Mike Davis for an extremely long time. I've also watched Kyle Van Noy for a long time, because they both went to BYU. It's where I graduated. But I asked myself, why has he gotten better? Again, at BYU, he was benched. A lot of people don't know that. He was actually benched his senior year. That's why he's an undrafted free agent. He was supposed to be pretty highly recruited, but he was benched the last season. But his mindset has changed. One of the things that I've heard about Mike Davis, and again, last season he struggled, and why we had to bring in someone like a J.C. Jackson is because Mike Davis had some things off the field that affected his play. Okay. Probably relationships, I'm sure. But you have to have a solid mindset, right? This season, he clearly has had a better mindset, and he's been more focused on his production as a corner in this league. So he's gotten better, and he's had tighter coverage, got to be closer to the football, and he's been challenged more consistently, and he's been playing proper leverage. He has done such a good job, even in the run game. I have been so impressed with his play. Very interesting to see what happens with him. I know, because there's still been some discussions about potentially releasing him at the end of the season. Don't think that, you never know how that's going to play out, guys, right? Especially with Justin Herbert's contract out there. We've got a ton of money on J.C. Jackson. Who knows what's going to happen there? But, and this is a really good point that Brandon Staley makes right here. There are plenty of guys that can run with guys and stay close to them. Now, I want to talk about a guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this. He's a rookie, Dean Leonard. Dean Leonard, if you remember the preseason games with Dean Leonard, he was always on his guy. Okay. He was always there. He ran with him. He was always stride for stride, but he was not in the right position to make the play correctly in the NFL. Now, he probably could have gotten away with it in college, which he did. Played for Ole Miss. But in the NFL, you have to make sure you're looking back, preparing for the ball, and being ready to make the play correctly. That's where Mike Davis has gotten so much better because he's positioning his body correctly. He's playing close, but he's also in a position to knock the ball away. That's huge. Now, again, you got to also understand a lot of quarterbacks are not throwing to Asante Samuel Jr. They respect him more than Mike Davis. But again, Mike Davis is stepping up. And Mike Davis is really covering the main guy. He's covering the guy. He's covering the main person. So, so again, he's got the tougher assignment for sure. And he's making plays, man. I mean, and there was some discussions, guys. We talked about this in the offseason that he might get released because, he's getting paid, I think, $7 million a year, right? He's doing a nice job for us for sure. And so I'm just really impressed with the way that he is managing the game day to day and going from that. The game that he really did step up really was against the Falcons. I know the out of your Falcon minds guys were like, man, this guy's balling out. And they're right. But, that game to me was the game that really he showed up and really kicked ass. So, this is interesting. So let's go into the Kyle Van Noy conversation. Guys, unfortunately, we were kind of bouncing around, but it's just I'm going through it as it's organized on the notes from Eric Smith. But there's a close connection. It's actually a really pure connection. I've watched him and I've seen him at New England, right? So it's interesting. I love how he always brings this John Carroll guys there, right? And I think what Brandon Staley means by that is people that want to play and have heart. And are just, I got plenty to give. And Kyle Van Noy really is that guy, right? He was a very high recruit. I think he was a 4-star recruit out of, I believe, Nevada. I think he lived in Las Vegas, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's been a number of years, of course. But he was a very high recruit for BYU when he went there. I remember I was excited. I was like, wow, this guy's a pretty high recruit. I think he'll be great. And he was absolutely killing it for the Cougars. But But again, he talks about a John Carroll guy. That's just a guy that is tough, gritty, willing to put it out on the field and get better, right? Because that's a big part of this game too, is getting better, improving. And Kyle Van Noy is that guy, right? Because you have to remember he's in the edge rushing position, which is not a natural position for him at all. And he's doing a great job. And he's doing a great job when it matters. Now, I've always argued that it doesn't really matter how you start, it's how you finish in the NFL. And that's really a big part of what we're seeing now with this team because everyone's coming back. We're getting healthy when we need to. Another reason why I do think Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco did not go out and get anybody in free agency, or not free agency, or in the trade deadline. Why give up draft picks when you know people are coming back? I know as a fan base, we go, man, come on. Let's go get OBJ. Let's go get some other guys. What's the point? What's the point, right? They're not going to come in. They're not going to really improve. They're not going to really understand the offense or the defense correctly. So, and why give up draft capital? When we've done such a good job of going there, right? So, anyways, so he's talked a little bit about this. I don't really want to go too into this, but again, he starts talking about John Carroll, his university there. This part I thought was really interesting. I think why this is interesting, his first interaction with Van Noy. So we talked a lot about how, over this season specifically, and even in free agencies, how Brandon Staley's done a good job of building a team. Now, there's a lot of arguments both ways about Tom Telesco, how Tom Telesco is a bad GM, yada, yada. We can have that conversation, argument all day. But look, bottom line, this is a great example of a coach becoming a GM and helping the team get better as a whole. Okay. I first met him on the phone, was going through free agency when he was kind of working his way through free agency. So he wasn't even signed, right? He wasn't signed. I felt like I had to get my recruiting hat on a little bit. I was able to talk to him on the phone. We probably had about a 45-minute conversation. If I recall, it was a long one, right? Kind of started there. I didn't know him personally. I didn't know personally Trey, but I knew his play style, which I think is interesting because, again, Brandon says he's very good at recognizing player qualities, right? If you recall when J.C. Jackson was sign of free agency, he came in, first interaction with him, opened up this book and just explained all the tangibles and intangibles that JC Jackson has as a corner, right? Well, same thing with Kyle Van Noy. And I'll be honest with you. Kyle Van Noy is not only a leader, but he's also a guy that can do a lot of different things, right? And you're seeing this right now. I want him to retire as a Charger. I really do. I really do. I would love to see that because, he's got some gas in the tank. And I know for a fact, I promise you, he'll probably want to play another few years here for sure. So I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed here, and retired here as a Charger. I really like that. People spoke highly of him. And good fit for what we're trying to accomplish, right? As a Charger team, right? So, I don't want to go too deep into this. Teams approach the upcoming playoff berth. Look, we want the 5th seed. It's very clear. That's what they're going for. I do think they're probably going to sit some people if they can, as much as possible. I mean, if we can get a lead, we'll probably start running the ball a lot and getting that offensive line to move as much as we possibly can, right? I don't think they want to injure Herbert in any way, shape, or form. So I think you're going to see a lot of screen passes. You're going to see a lot of short passes. That's not really our offense. I mean, again, we're doing a lot of checkdowns because again, some of the play schemes, in my opinion, are a little bit vanilla, a little bit uninspired, if you will. But again, I think they're going to focus on making sure you get the 5th seed. I think that's what they really care about, right? But again, they're going to take things by case by case. Like, I don't think Derwin James is going to play much. I don't think Joey Bosa is going to play much. He'll play some, maybe 10, 15, 20 snaps. Again, it takes a long time for your body to be ready to play football. And it's interesting. We're not seeing any injuries now. You're not seeing a lot of teams with more injuries because your body's now conditioned. It's been beat up enough, or how to play through your injuries. You're just working through it, right? So anyways, I think they're going to look at very specific players and make some decisions, right, and go from there. Again, Monday Night Football game, I don't really want to talk about it. Again, we already talked about DeMar Hamlin. It's interesting. But I do like it. But our focus is going beyond the Broncos this week, and it's interesting seeing, a lot of the interviews talking, even with Justin Herbert and some of the other players, they're letting them know, hey, you got the 5th seed. Great. Okay. I think the mindset always needs to be focus on the team that you're playing. Do not worry about what you can't control and worry about what you can control, which is basically the way you prepare and be ready for the next team. And that's the mindset you got to have in the NFL. It's a mindset you got to have going into the playoffs specifically. So I don't really want to go too deep into this, but this is the play where Kyle Van Noy clicked this season, the counter spin. I don't want to go too deep into this, but bottom line, it's clear that he had to learn a new role, and it took him time to understand that new role. And I remember that. He was a 3-man rush, and he did a very good job of getting pressure. I do think he actually got a sack on there too. And it was a good win for him. He did a good job. So I don't really want to go too deep into that. Now, Morgan Fox is another guy I want to talk about. Dude, Morgan Fox has been amazing. Or AKA Megan Fox. Yes. The thing about him is he's a tough, rugged guy, right? He's just, he is the, what does he call him here? John Carroll guy, right here. The John Carroll guys. John Carroll guys. That is Morgan Fox. Are you guys seeing a theme here? Right? Think about this for a second. Are you seeing a theme? It is very clear. This is where I know Aether and a lot of people really love Brandon Staley. And I like Brandon Staley a lot. This is probably my thing that I believe is the best thing about Brandon Staley. He's good at bringing the right type of guys in. Kyle Van Noy. Well, JC Jackson. Whatever is going to happen with that situation, we don't even know yet at this point, right? Khalil Mack. Morgan Fox, Sebastian Joseph Day. He knows the type of guys that he could bring in that are going to be good locker room guys, good leaders, and good focuses on making things better for this team, and a glue guy, right? Because look, the reality is this, and we talked a lot about this on our post-game show. Tillery, he's basically taken Tillery's role. That's really what he's done. So Tillery was really more of a pass type of defensive lineman, right? He was more of like a hybrid / defensive lineman, but rush the passer defensive lineman. decent at stopping the run, but really more focused on stopping the pass. And he's kicking ass. And Tillery sucked. Tillery was not good at that, right? He did not do a good job of getting any type of penetration or anything, right? So, again, these are the glue guys, the people you need to step up and do things. And again, this is a guy that was, down the roster list a bit. And at the end of the day, he stepped up and he's a guy. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with him and his contract and everything moving forward. We probably shouldn't talk about that, right? But I cannot talk enough about how awesome Morgan Fox has been for us. And again, Fehoko has been fantastic. SJD has been fantastic. But those three guys on the line, very good defensive linemen, right? So it's good. Versatile, whatever it takes for the team to win. Career high for sacks. And I think sky's the limit. I think he could do even better, right? I really do. I think, give him another year in this system. Forget about it, right? He could be, again, you guys are seeing what we saw back in 2020, except he's just better. He's getting better, and he's a big factor in our ability to play defense at a high level. So, anyways, Rashawn Slater, I don't think we'll see him back until maybe the playoffs, but, again, you really never know. Again, we would love to. I think that you guys will sense the momentum in terms of how we handle that, right? I think that, again, playoffs probably good shot for him. But my concern would be bringing him back too prematurely and re-aggravating that injury could be, obviously detrimental to his career. So I get a little nervous about that conversation. But again, I think there's a lot to be said. Can't talk enough about special teams. I mean, good God. Wow. We were horrible last year. I don't really want to go too deep into this, but again, I think Ryan Ficken, I think there could be a chance he could end up being a head coach somewhere else because we're literally one of the worst teams in the NFL in special teams. And now he's, are you kidding me? I really think about this a lot and go, oh my God, like this guy is that good. And he's been in the league for a long time, but I'll tell you, there's two things. Josh Harris, Pro Bowl long snapper, huge. And our punter, J.K. Scott. Those are probably the two biggest additions. And then DeAndre Carter was big too. DC has stepped up. Good wide receiver, helping us out. Not the best, not the worst, but he's definitely helped us. Been really great. And DeAndre Carter right here obviously talks about that. Now, and it's crazy. We've been through three kickers, but I think Cameron Dicker the kicker is going to be our kicker from now on. I don't think Hopkins is coming back, which is kind of sad because he lost his job to an injury, unfortunately. And, he was tough and gritty, and he went out there and kicked that field goal again. Probably re-aggravated his hamstring in the process. I mean, thank you for doing that for us, but holy smokes, man. Probably loses his job to Cameron Dicker at this point, but it's interesting. So now I want to talk a little bit about this too. And again, this is part of my arguments around Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley combination. Look, we saw Jaw Taylor come in, and he did a great job when Callahan went down. He did a great job. Okay. Our corners are stepping up. We still haven't really seen Dean Leonard. Now, I'm really curious to see if Dean Leonard, if we do lose one of our safeties, I believe it's either Nas or Lowe. Let me know in the comments below. Is it Nas Adderley? I think it's Nas's last season with the Chargers contract wise. They probably won't re-sign him, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if we drafted another safety. But Dean Leonard, I think, could step up and be a very good safety, right? Again, will be very interesting to see how that plays out. But you're seeing these guys that really haven't had a lot of field time, but are contributing very heavily on special teams. The good thing about that is you make the team, but you're there for depth. And that's how you start playing in the NFL. And bottom line, especially when you're a lower draft pick like these folks, you got to prove yourself. And, oh, by the way, safety Raheem Lane. And Raheem Lane has done very well. So, again, we have plenty of safeties, right? So it'd be very interesting to see how things go with Nas and Lowe. But, linebacker Nick Neiman has done great, but again, we have a pretty deep linebacker room right now, especially with K9 and Drew Tranquil playing lights out. I mean, guys, these guys are good. I think a lot of these guys could play on any team in the NFL for the most part, or, at least some of the lower teams for sure, probably be starters. And so it's really interesting seeing that, right? So you have to sit back and say, look, Ryan Ficken's done a fantastic job. These Chris Gould guys. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see where these folks' careers move after this season. I really hope Ryan Ficken stays here. I get really nervous that he might be picked up. Anyways, that's a bit of a, bit of a conversation. I think, obviously I'm kind of hoping someone like a Joe Lombardi gets picked up, but again, that's just my opinion. But they've continued to improve, right? And you cannot give enough credit to Ryan Ficken and Chris Gould in doing such a great job. I mean, it's been amazing. So I think this is pretty much it. I believe this is the last part of it here. Yeah, and I don't really want to go too deep into this, but teaching the skill of hard work. I'm going to stop sharing right now. Look, bottom line, guys, this season has been a cadre of up and downs, right? I mean, it just has been. But thank God we are where we're at right now. We're sitting in the 5th seed. We're probably going to get the 5th seed, I would assume, unless we really lay an egg against the Broncos, which I really don't want to see. But bottom line, guys, the Broncos got nothing to play for. They're a team in disarray. I don't even know. You got to even wonder what they're going to do with Russell Wilson. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if they sat him this game. I mean, to be honest with you, why even play the guy? You're paying the dude way too much money, and who knows? But again, we're kicking butt at the right time. That's the part that I want to discuss, right? We're doing a great job. We're making it work. We're looking like a cohesive team. It was nice to see the offensive side of the ball, finally a blowout. Battle for LA is right there, guys. We're the better team, clearly. And I would argue there's probably even more Charger fans in that stadium than there were, Rams fans. I mean, that's the honest truth, man. I mean, I literally sat there and I'm like, man, it didn't look like there was hardly any Rams fans out there. So it's exciting to see, guys. It's exciting to see where we stand. It's exciting to see how we're progressing as a team and we're moving forward. Again, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but Damar Hamlin, thoughts go out to you. And, it'd be very interesting to see what happens with the NFL, right? How is the NFL going to handle this? What's really going to come out? As I'm filming this, as 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, I'm sure more news is going to come out at this point, but bottom line, guys, we're here to support you. Andrew Boltbro's here, and see you guys in the next one.